So let me introduce Dave. For those of you who don't know him, Dave Stewart is the founder of Fresh Air Leadership Company. He's a good friend of mine, amazing mentor, advisor. Our business wouldn't be where it is today without him. Yeah, right. His advice has been super invaluable over the years. Yeah. He specializes in helping chief executives, senior teams become more effective, resilient, and aligned. Um, had a leadership journey that's shaped by the military. He was extremely senior in the military and doing some really, really interesting roles. He's currently in mountain rescue, and had other senior executive roles across multiple sectors. And so he's bringing what I would say is real world experience to what he's doing with his clients and so on and so forth. He's based in Perthshire, designs powerful indoor, which is really important, and outdoor programs that get us to shift our thinking, build relationships, and ultimately equip leaders to perform at their best in demanding and uncertain environments. So there you go, Dave. Over to you. Yeah.
Brilliant. And am I allowed to tell people that
Premise.
you got Chat GPT to
No, you can't tell them. I sounded intelligent when you did that, right? So I
okay.
got ChatGPT to do it, and I thought it did a really good job of defining
Yeah,
Dave because he doesn't like it when people say I'm outdoor Dave, right?
yeah,
It's indoor and outdoor, and it picked that up, yeah. So it
yeah,
was good.
yeah. Well, thanks very
I
much.
think you forgot the rock
Oh,
star part.
Well,
oh yeah, 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 yeah. There you go.
I was just going to sort of fill in, but obviously, first of all, thank you so much for everybody for investing the time in this next short period. I appreciate those companies, people from big companies, as well as people who are startups or solopreneurs. So the whole idea of team effectiveness will have a very different context, different meaning for everybody. And in a sense, that's the point of this first session about context and situation. But my journey, from my point of view, is Boy Scouts and all that sort of stuff. Rock band for 2 years, the lead guitarist. Mountain rescue for 4 years. I then joined the army for 3 years and left after almost 30. Having my first team job, as it were, was I was in charge of 30 soldiers on operations in Northern Ireland. I served in the SAS, commanded an infantry battalion on operations, and ultimately I was running a £1 billion portfolio of high-tech kits and services for special forces and a whole bunch of other people. I am okay. I don't wear tartan underwear anymore. It was a Highland regiment I was at. I've left all that behind. Fabulous part of the story, but I've moved on and I've served at executive, non-exec, and chair levels in public, private, and not-for-profit sector. So I come from a real world point of view, as Fraser has mentioned, plus a lot of continuous professional development. So that's the story, and we're all about team effectiveness. And within that, obviously, there's leadership, individual leadership, etc. But actually, stuff only gets done by collections of individuals. And that's the thing I want to talk about today. So, as Fraser said, it's going to be a short burst from me, 10, 15 minutes, and then open up to Q&A. And there'll be a recording available for those of you who want to revisit later on and for people who didn't manage to make it today. And this is the first in a series of 5 webinars, and the number 5 will become apparent when I show you a couple of pictures. So let's crack on. So, oh, why is this slideshow not working? Technical issue. Here we go. The point I want to make is teams are complex adaptive systems. They aren't a diagram, and the things I'm going to show you aren't true. They're basically windows into a very messy room. And that's the thing to bear in mind. And there's so many factors come into play: moods, our own individual baggage, dysfunctional other people, pressures of resources. All those things are part of the mix. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of a framework, and then we're going to look at the sort of context and situation element of that. So first of all, models and frameworks are not reality. I've said that already. Models tend to try and explain what's going on, and frameworks tend to be almost like an inventory or levers, things that you might want to pay attention to. So this is subtly different, and I'm going to share something that's got a bit of both in it. The other sort of caveat is it's not just about individual behaviors. Quite a lot of team interventions and psychometric tools and other things which are good in themselves tend to tackle what I believe are symptoms. The way we behave is a symptom of a whole bunch of other stuff. And quite often we'll do a values workshop or we'll do a psychometric tool, and actually nothing really changes. And I'm going to just explain a bit more about that shortly. The reason those things don't work quite often is that if you look at this, again, another diagram that's not reality, but it's a window into the mess, okay? So there's me, okay? I've got my experience, I've got my moods, I've got my biases, I've got my emotional baggage. I then walk into a team environment and we're us, and I'm interacting with all those other messy people, and we are also being impacted by the resources we have as a team, the processes, the structures, and then we sit within a wider organization and society where there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening. So it really is a messy space, and that's why single tools won't fix the thing that you're experiencing. And of course, that really is all about silver bullets. Just beware of silver bullets. Sometimes you want to take a systems view of what's going on and then try and work out what's cause, what's effect, what are the influences. So that's the key messages. So that's the opening gambit. So here's the team, right? These are wonderful people from Epilepsy Connections, which is a fabulous Scottish charity. And that white oval is the notional team boundary. Okay, some boundaries are firm, some boundaries are a bit porous, but this is, stay with me on this one. There's the team boundary. So today we're going to talk about situations and the things that happen inside the business but outside your team. We're going to talk about now, next, and after next. The second element, and this is where the number 5 comes from, is foundations. And we always, things like purpose and values, we're always talking about that on LinkedIn, psychological safety, leadership, etc., etc. All those things are the foundations of effective teamwork. The next bit is not often tackled, aspirations. So what kind of team do we want to become? Quite often, you will have a team that's essentially a hub and spoke. So you've got the all-powerful team leader or chairperson, and team meetings tend to be one-to-one conversations about individuals' targets or functional targets or silo targets. Everyone else is switched off and is thinking about what they're having for supper. And real teamwork is about interdependency. It's about work outside of meetings where there's mutual accountability, mutual support, and they're working on pan-team projects that actually deliver value rather than just reporting. So what kind of team do you want to become? And that really depends on the purpose of the team. The next item is operations, which this is how we experience a team, isn't it? It's actually the behaviors, the ways of working, how we manage conflict, how we make decisions, who should be in the team, who should be co-opted, who isn't in the team and feels aggrieved that they're not in the team, what kind of structure is relevant for now, do we need to change the structure in 6 months' time, etc. So all that is how we experience teamwork. And then the other bit that often doesn't get paid attention to is integrations. As a team, we are only effective if we're part of a value chain. How do we interact with the other teams in the business or other partners? How do we together, as a sort of team of teams, create the value that the business is trying to deliver? So those are the 5 elements and are the subjects of the 5 separate webinars. So let's take a quick dive into context and situation. So just give me a little bit of water. I've been having a cough of late. Good, right. So context and situation. I'm just going to go through 4 tools which will help you and colleagues make sense of the world outside of your team boundary. Now, some of this is probably very familiar. I'm going to give you perhaps a slightly different twist on how some of these tools might be used. And then we can maybe talk about where our AI fits into all of this. So Pestel, again, some of you may be familiar, maybe unfamiliar, but these Pestel are those elements on the left-hand side of the screen, and they talk about different domains of activity that are happening in the outside world. So very clearly, under technology, AI is a big thing that's happening. A year ago, the increase in national insurance rates for businesses created a big political and social and economic impact. And obviously competition in your market is a key factor. Now, when you look outside to the outside world and then think about what's called the three horizons, and I think this is a McKinsey thing, you might start to think, well, actually, what's happening now outside in the world that's going to affect how we operate? So to use the metaphor, what crocodiles are in the canoe? Next is, what are the crocodiles that I can see that are swimming towards the canoe? And then after next are, what's that ripple of water 50 meters away? Is it just a ripple? Is it another kind of crocodile? So it's quite useful to think about those three time dimensions, and they will be defined by your particular industry. So I'm not going to be specific. Now, when you look at this matrix of scope and time, you can then start to begin to identify threats and opportunities. Now, when you drop those threats and opportunities and you drop them into this thing called SWOT, again, which some of you are very familiar with, what I've often seen is companies will then just put a big list of stuff, look at it and try and make sense of it. Now, what we do is we think, well, actually, if we pair the threats against our weaknesses, what is actually going to sink us? So what is existential about the stuff that's outside of the team, outside of the organization? So this is about a survival pairing. Next is, if we survive, what are the opportunities that we have the capacity and strengths to actually exploit or take advantage of? And then the next step from this type of pairing is to identify what must we do, what could we do, or rather what should we do, because it makes good sense, it fits with our purpose and our ambition, and what could we do if we were really bold, if we got extra funding, merged or whatever. So this is beginning to give you the bones of a strategic plan. But from a team perspective, this can be used as a tool for looking outside of your team into your wider organization, as well as looking outside of the organization and further apart. So this is just a way of making sense of stuff that's outside. Now, another fabulous tool that I want to talk about is the Cynefin model from David Snowden, who used to be the knowledge director of IBM. This is a way of making collective sense as a team, creating that kind of conversation to give you a common framing of the outside world, and inviting you to respond in a choiceful way rather than reacting, which fraught with risk in a way that responding is not. So in a very for context and very quick description, if the environment is very simple, it's more of the same sort of stuff that you're always doing. You know what it is, you're familiar, you've actually probably codified it, you've probably got a book of best practice, and you just do more of it. When life becomes a bit more complicated, you kind of know how to do it. So think about building cars. I'm just thinking about you there, Anthony. Building cars, you don't know how the new model's going to be, but you know how to build cars, and you've got lots of good practice to draw on. So it's still a kind of comfy place. Then you're in a complex environment where actually no one knows how the story is going to end. You as a leader are asking questions rather than directing, because you're trying to get intelligence, you're trying to make sense of what's going on. So you're making things up as you go along, but in a sort of a proper sense. It's not just a happy-go-lucky. You're getting intelligence, you're responding, more intelligence, more responding. And then there's chaos. So there's COVID, there's 9/11. It's unknowable. No one's been there ever before. You're under time pressure, and you just got to give it your best shot. So this is what could be happening outside, and it could be concurrent. So it's not a question of one box, another box, another box. All of this could be concurrent in your business world. And this gives you a hint into terms of how you might operate as a team or as a leader. So in a simple world, you might teach, because you are the owner of best practice. It's a known, familiar environment, and you can teach. When it gets a bit more complicated, you're possibly facilitating as a program manager type of leader. in a complex environment, you're exploring, you're edging your way forward by asking questions. You're empowering people closest to the client to find out what's going on. You're asking questions. And in a chaotic environment, for example, a turnaround, you have to direct, you have to control. Your less and less people can sign off checks. And the whole point of all of this ultimately is to move towards an ever simplifying environment. So outside of the team, you're trying to create a simple environment where you've got known things going on. But clearly, the next thing comes along, so you've got to keep on cycling this. It's not a static place at all. Now, the other final part of this is actually the input to these tools are data, information, intelligence. There's facts, there's opinions, assumptions. How are you as a team going to qualify the things you're making decisions on? So that's a big thing you need to think about. Could AI be used to automate parts of this process? Perhaps. What about the hallucinations? It's a bit of a balance. You need to have human in the loop. Publications, surveys, and something that we find often is people have forgotten about talking to people, about networking. So it's particularly in a big organization, stepping out of one silo and talking to other people and creating new relationships is super powerful. So, the human interaction is something not to lose sight of. So this is almost to the close now. So this is the big picture, the 5 elements of a framework. We've talked about situations, and we have got to make this point, okay? The so what of this little 10 minutes is don't just look inwards like so many teams do. Jenny and Johnny aren't getting on, or why am I coming to this meeting, or can we shorten this process? All good stuff, but look outwards and look onwards and look forwards. There's a big world out there that's actually impacting the way you behave, the way you operate as a team. So create a cycle of looking outwards. Might be every quarter, might be every week, depends on your environment, but look outwards, not just inwards. Do both. So that's what we've done. Teams as complex adaptive systems. We've done a quick overview. We've looked very quickly at context and situation. And going forward, we're going to look at foundations in January, and then the other elements in March, April, and May. So that's the journey ahead. Thank you all, and a Merry Christmas.